Well, the conflict in Syria has long stopped ending up at its borders. The drawn-out fighting has seen a mass exodus of Syrians into neighbouring states. Also, clashes of pro- and anti-Assad supporters in Lebanon have left 7 killed and dozens injured. Here's our Middle East correspondent Paula Sleer.
The crisis in Syria continues to spill over into neighbouring countries. For the second straight night on Tuesday, several people were killed in the northern Lebanese city of Tripoli during clashes between Alawites and Sunni Muslims. This comes amid growing evidence that massive amounts of weapons are being smuggled through Lebanon and reportedly also through Turkey to the Syrian opposition. Now, Moscow has condemned this in the strongest terms and urged nations not to supply weapons to the Syrian rebels. At the same time, the Turkish government is investigating possible Syrian links to a car bomb explosion on Monday that killed 9 people, many of them children, in the southeast of the country. There are growing concerns in Ankara that the Kurdish Workers' Party, known as the PKK, is behind this blast, although no one has come forward and claimed responsibility. The PKK is regarded as a terrorist organization by Ankara, by the United States and by the European Union. And ever since the violence in Syria has spiraled, there are growing concerns that they are extending their influence and increasing their activities. Here in Jordan, too, the situation remains fluid. There are at least 150,000 Syrian refugees who have crossed over into Jordan. They are currently being housed in a number of temporary refugee shelters along the Jordanian-Syrian border. But Jordan is a country with few natural resources. It has its own problems of scarcity of water and its own fragile economy, and it is struggling to deal with this influx of refugees. The camps are overcrowded. We've also heard reports of the outbreak of tuberculosis and other health risks. The international community is struggling to deal with the situation. The American President Barack Obama has warned that if Syria moves or uses its chemical arsenal, the United States will reconsider its decision not to launch any kind of military action in Syria. At the same time, Moscow has said that there cannot be any kind of unilateral action, that there needs to be an international response that is agreed to by all sides, and that consensus is reached. Paula Sleer, RT, Amman, Jordan.
International politics professor Jeremy Salt from Bilkent University says Turkey has ignored many of the implications when deciding how to act in this conflict.
The Turkish government didn't seem to realise the implications of what it was doing last year when it set out to confront the Syrian government. Now, anyone who knows the region would realise that once they confronted Syria, they would be confronting Iran. They would know also that Iraq would come into the picture. They would also know that opening up the situation in Syria would exacerbate the Kurdish issue and would also kind of create tensions and opposition amongst the Alawites. And all this has actually happened. Bashar al-Assad himself said when all this began a year ago that Syria is not Libya. You can't do here what you did in Libya. And Syria is a red line, that if you intervene in Syria, there will be an earthquake. And I think that is very much the possibility that if the Syrian government can be brought down, the repercussions will spread right across the region, very much into Lebanon. They're already spreading into Lebanon. We've seen that Iraq is already having the same kind of problems the Syrian government is having, with daily attacks by Sunni Muslim armed cells on Shia Muslims. So the consequences of what is now going on, unless there's a bit more responsibility shown by the greater powers involved in this business, are virtually unpredictable. They could go anywhere.